Hello, Professor Hildebrandt here with one more video for Chapter 13. This one on the regression analysis from the second half of the chapter. So when you have a data set and you're asked to find the regression equation, there's kind of three different ways you can do that. And I've had some questions about it, so I just wanted to kind of walk you through it. So suppose we had these values for x and y. You can do this by hand. You can see here in the Connect, they're showing you how. So you would just list out these columns. First, you have to calculate your x bar, or the average for your x values, and then the same thing for y bar. In column 3, you then take x minus the x bar, so 3 minus 4.8 for negative 1.8, and go on down. You do the same thing, y minus y bar, and then you take the values in columns 3 and 4 and square those, and that gives you the values here in columns 5 and 6. You're going to need to sum those up because that's going to help us get to our standard deviation. So, for example, the standard deviation of x is the square root of the sum of x minus x bar squared, which was 12.8, divided by n minus 1, where n is your sample size. And so here our sample size is 5, so 5 minus 1 is 4. We find our standard deviation for the samples of x to be 1.8. And then you would do the same thing to find your standard deviation for our y values. In the very last column here, you take what you had from, you take your x minus x bar times the y minus y bar and sum those up, and that is then used in some of the equations from chapter 13 so that you can find your r, your b, and your a to then get to your regression equation. But I just want to pop into Excel and show you guys two different methods to do this in Excel. So to start, I'm going to use a scatter plot to find my linear equation. And so I'm going to just highlight all of my data here, click Insert, and then I'm going to go over here and choose the scatter graph here. Notice how my toolbar up here has changed. So here on the far left, I'm going to click Add Chart Element, go down to Trend Line, and select Linear. So now I have the line, but I need the equation of this line. So I'm going to double click on this new trend line, and some formatting options have come up. And you can see at the very bottom, it says Display Equation on the chart. Now this is kind of small. Let's see if I can make it larger. Well, maybe if I... There we go, make it a little larger. And so we find y equals 1.625 plus 0.8281x. If we go back over here, when we found our equation, we had the same thing here. They just rounded a little bit, right? 0.83x. We had 0.828, so rounding up is 0.83, and then 1.63. And again, if we round up our 1.625, we would get the same. So one way, again, to work some of these problems, and a lot of your Connect questions on these assignments, it gives you the data file. So you can just click on that. It'll open up your data in Excel. Again, you highlight both columns, insert a scatter plot, add the trend line linear, and then add the equation for the trend line. So that is one method, or a second method you could use instead of doing these calculations by hand. The next one is we're going to use data analysis. When you click on the data tab, you should hopefully on the far right have an option that says data analysis. If you don't, I found a fairly easy way, at least in my Excel, to add it. I go up here to Tools, and then Excel add-ins, and you highlight the analysis tool pack. Once you do that, then when you go to this data tab, you'll see data analysis over here. So I'm going to select data analysis, and I'm going to choose a regression, hit OK, and then, well, it's guessing for me because I've already done several of these. But so input Y, so you're going to go select your Y cell all the way down, and then put your cursor in the input X range and do the same thing, X all the way down. Our first row is labels, X and Y, so you want to check this box for labels, and I'm going to select to put it in a new worksheet. I'm going to hit OK, and then it generates for me the regression summary. And if you look down here, these are the two values that you're going to use to get your equation. And so this first one here is your A value, and then the second one here is your B value. And again, you can see that those do match up with rounding to the answer for this equation. So hopefully this helps you guys with your regression analysis equations, but if you have more questions, please send me an email.